Well, today we're going to finish up with this particular section. When we finish chapter 18, it'll be the end of Paul's second missionary journey. But it's the two cities that he is going to be in that, to me, they've always been fascinating. I remember when I was in high school and we did world history. Man, I fell in love with the Spartans and King Linus and the Athenians and all those people. And then when I got to college and took Western civilization, man, I dug into it more. I mean, it just fascinated me. And then in my graduate work and postgraduate work, it was always that particular time in history that I really liked to study. And that is where Paul is going to be now. And we pick up our story in verse 1, chapter 18. And when we look at it, we see that he's going to leave Athens and he's going to go to Corinth. Now, once he gets there, he runs into a couple, Aquila and Priscilla, husband and wife, and the scriptures tells us that he is from Pontus, and we're going to look at that in just a moment, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more. But anyway, Paul, as he is there, it says in verse 4 that he reasoned in the synagogue every Saturday or every Sabbath, trying to persuade the Jews and the Greeks. So here he is. He meets these people, and what I want us to look at is where he is at. Now then, if you can see this purple line here, this is going to be his second journey. And last week or week before last, we got him all up here into Asia Minor. He was told not to go into the southern territories, not to go north, but to make his way all the way to Taurus. And from there, he goes to Philippi. Now, Philippi is very, very important in the scriptures. It was founded by King Philip of Macedonia, who is the father of Alexander the Great. So the problem is there's not any synagogues here. So Paul, when he sits down, the only people that he can really talk to is a bunch, it says, devout women. So you got women that knew the scripture, and that's who he talked with. Well, he leaves here and he goes to Thessalonica. Now, folks, things didn't turn out well for him in Thessalonica. These people hated him. For some reason, they didn't like him. So when he left Thessalonica and he goes to Berea, these folks followed him. So he's run out of this city as well. Now, he makes his way all the way down to Athens. And folks, this is one of the few cities, it in Ephesus, that he's not going to be run out of. There, he's going to be able to sit down on the agora, talk to all these philosophers, all these leaders, and they all listen. And they would discuss religion back and forth. So Paul, when he leaves there, he goes to Corinth. Now then, this is where we're going to pick up our story, is here in Corinth. Now, I want you to really look at this city. On the aerial map, we can see that Athens is here, and as he makes his way all the way to Corinth, it is 50 miles from there to here. It is another mile and a half to the city of Corinth itself. Now then, when we talk about Corinth, folks, this little area right here, in the 7th century BC, I forget which emperor was going to try to build a canal through there. Well, he gave up on it. But it was finally finished by the French in 1873. Now, what makes this this little place so important is when we look at our map, it doesn't look like it's very far to sail around Peloponnese. That is what this is, and to go all the way around. But for Paul to travel from here, from Ephesus all the way back to Caesarea, it took him 8 weeks by ship. Now then, when you look at this and you've got the Aegean Sea, this is here, the wind comes off the desert up here in this area, and it funnels all the way down through here, and it makes sea travel deadly for folks. It also travels down through this area all the way to here, which is going to be the Sea of Galilee, and it's going to cause violent storms. And we are going to talk about these storms a little bit later when Paul is shipwrecked. What causes it? And we're going to look at those things. But Corinth is a very, very important city as we begin to look at it. Now then, if you went there today, this would be it. This is what you would see. Is mostly ruins. So, Pliny, which is a first century historian, wrote about his time, and Corinth is considered to be what he called the ornament of Greece. It is very beautiful. It is named after Corinthius, who is the son of Jupiter. And you got to realize these people are they had gods for everything, and they would worship just about anything. But mostly the Corinthians worshiped themselves. They worshiped men more than anything. In 64 BC, Julius Caesar made this particular area, or made Greece, a Roman province. And from that, it becomes very, very wealthy. This little bitty city on this isthmus is going to have over 600,000 people. Folks, that's unbelievable. And give you an example of what 600,000 people would be, Birmingham only has a population of 135,000. So, the largest city 230,000. The largest city in Alabama is Huntsville, and it has 235,000. If you look at the city of Memphis, Memphis is huge. It has a population of 600,000. So you got all these people. But folks, it's not I think one of the reasons that it fascinates me is I want to think of something with no bathrooms, no running water. That's what, most folks think. It's not. Folks, we're talking about a huge modern city. And when you look at it, it had a theater. Not only did it have a theater, but it also had a theater for just to go in and sing. It was enclosed. This place was unbelievable. If we looked at it today, this is what it would look like. But that is a population of 57,000 people. So can you see how it declined? But this city is so important, it made its wealth from commerce. Because if you go back and look at our map here, everything from the east is going to funnel 2 ways to get over there to Italy. It is going to come this way, and it is either going to leave Sidon, or it's going to leave Caesarea, and it's going to make its way all the way to Italy. And that takes a long, long time. So the other way is land route, and they would come right here to Taurus or to Ephesus, and they would put it on the boat and they would sail it around. The problem is the storms that are generated in this area. So Paul comes here and he is going to stay there for 18 months. These people are going, he's going to go to the synagogue, he's going to reason with the people. The culture, the Greek culture is just unbelievable. I mean, we're not talking about stupid people. We're talking about pretty near geniuses, like they went to school at Pennington. I mean, you know. But anyway, we it is so fascinating to me. So if I can get back to where I was at. Okay, we'll pick the story back up with Paul, and it says that Paul was reasoning in the synagogue every Sabbath, trying to persuade the Jews and the Greeks. And you got to realize, you've got a lot of Greeks that had converted to Judaism simply because of the Jewish God, Jehovah. I mean, they saw something in him, and when we talk about Apollos, a little bit later on, he's going to be one of those that is going to be preaching, but he doesn't know really about Jesus Christ until Priscilla and Aquila give him an education. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Anyway, when Paul leaves, he leaves Silas and Timothy there. So he makes his way. He goes all the way down, and this is where we're going to pick up our story. But this is what is so important. Look at the vision that he had. In that, God come to him and tell him, hey, don't be afraid. Go ahead and talk. Tell them all about it. And it is from there, when we look in verse, 6, it says, from now on, I will go only to the Gentiles. Folks, that is big. The Gentiles is me and you. That makes sense? So, that's where we're at. Now then, when we get to Corinth, this is what he's going to find there. It's going to be the temple to the love goddess Aphrodite. And it is located 1,750 feet outside the city up on this tall hill, and everybody can see this temple. People would come to Corinth for a weekend just to commit sin and adultery and to do all the things that we're not supposed to do because this temple housed over 1,000 prostitutes that you could come in and just have your way with them. So this is what it actually looks like today. If we could load up and take a trip to Corinth, the temple itself is still there. Now then, in verse 7, it says, Paul left the synagogues, and then he talks about staying in with Titus Justus, who worshiped God. And when we look at this guy, he lived next door to the synagogue. So he was seen, people could see Paul, they could listen to Paul, and this guy's household is baptized, and he is a leader. So Paul isn't just getting some ordinary somebody like me. I mean, he's getting leaders. He's getting people of influence, and he's talking to them in the synagogue, but he is reasoning with them. He's not like some people like me that say, well, just go to hell then. You know, you witness somebody and they want to argue, well, just go to hell. Well, that ain't no Christian way to be. I'm trying to do better. Paul wasn't me. Paul sat down and reasoned with people. He would talk to them about it. Can you imagine what kind of person Paul actually was? I mean, they could beat him and he'd forgive them. But that's where we're at. So it is here in verse 11 we see that Paul is going to stay there for a year and 6 months. Pick it up in 18. It says, now Paul, when he remained many days longer, took leave of the brothers and sisters and sailed to Syria. And Priscilla and Aquila was with him. So he's bringing Priscilla and Aquila to Ephesus. So when he came to Ephesus, he left them there. Now himself entered into the synagogue, reasoned with the Jews, and when they asked him to stay for a longer time, he did not consent, but took leave and said, hey, I got to return, but I'll be back. He set sail down then. So let's talk about this city, Ephesus, if I can. Well, I guess we'll talk about verses 12 first. Here he's going to meet a guy. He ain't a nice guy, so to speak. He is proconsul. He is Gallio. He's over all of Anchuria. He's rude. He's just like Pontius Pilate is back down in Jerusalem. So he's there, and it's in so the Jews, they don't like what Paul is saying. Now, he is being as reasonable as he can, but these people are so dogmatic, they just, no, you're wrong. It's not so. Y'all don't know anybody like that, do you? Don't know somebody like that. Well, me neither. Don't look at me like I'm wrong. But this guy could reach people, but he couldn't reach the Jews. So this is gonna play. So the Jews, they gather Paul up and they take him to Gallio, and there he is going to pass judgment at the judgment seat. How many of you have been to the Biblical Museum over in Georgia? Have you been there? Just you? And you?
I wish we could make a trip and all of us go.
We need to. It's about an hour and 20-minute drive, maybe an hour and 30-minute drive.
It's awesome. They
Oh.
stay and eat the meal and everything.
Let's see if I got a picture. I don't have a picture of the judgment seat. Thought I did. Oh well. Anyway, going into the city, into any major city, the most prominent thing you would see as you go into that city is going to be the judgment seat. And depending on the size of the city, they may have benches or stones or something around that for people to sit on. But never who the leader is would sit at the judgment seat or sit in the judgment seat, and they would bring people to him, like Brenda falling in the lake yesterday. She would take Jerry to court for pushing her in, and she would get to argue her case before the proconsul, the leader that sat on the judgment seat, and his judgment is final. So they're bringing Paul to Gallio. He's the proconsul, and they don't like what he's saying, and I can just see all of them talking at the same time, trying to tell how sorry Paul is. Well, Gallio, older brother, Seneca is going to play a major role in history, in that he is one of those Stoic philosophers that we talked about last week. This dude is the one that taught Neo, the emperor. So folks, that ain't a good thing. But this guy is more of he reasons. He's got that part with him that is reason. He's not so narrow-minded that his ears touch in the middle. And he lets Paul go. Now then, so Paul heads to Ephesus. Now then, if we could go to this city today, we would be able to walk down this street right here, and it is 30 feet wide, and it is paved with pure marble. But at the end of the street is going to be the library of Ephesus. Now then, this place, Ephesus itself doesn't have but about 225,000 people at the time Paul is there. But the library houses over 12,000 scrolls. And it's not just a library, it is also a sarcophagus, because a lot of famous people are going to be buried down in the bottom of it. So these people, they have the ability to reason too. They sit and they talk and they listen to what Paul actually has to say. Now then, the Romans were so good in their street building that this particular picture right here was taken in 2019. And for a street that was built, what, over 2,000 years ago, pretty good shape. And I wish Blount County commissioners would go over and look, you know.
It looks better than Bowerman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better than Bowerman.
All right. But the big thing was the temple to Diana. Now then, the Ephesians believed that she was a goddess that fell from the sky, and they built a temple to her. And this temple at the time is going to be the largest structure in the world. It is, as a matter of fact, it's going to be one of the seven wonders of the world. It's made out of pure marble. Let's see what else. Okay. So that's what the goddess looks like. The building itself, I got that somewhere, how big this thing is. Here we go. All right, largest building in the world at its time. It was 220 feet wide, 425 feet long. The roof was held up by 127 columns that were 50 feet high and 6 feet in diameter. The interior of the building was open to the sky, so the goddess Diana could look up into the heavens. It took 220 years to build this temple. 220 years. And we think that's something. But folks, when you look at the big cathedrals that in Europe, it took hundreds of years to build them. So think about that. You're the architect. You probably only going to get to see them start to lay the foundation. And look how many people are going to die. Now this was built on the backs of slaves. Of the 220-something thousand people that lived in Ephesus, 2/3 of them were slaves, and they were used in the construction of the cities, and they would use them in construction of the roads. So, this is where we're at. Right there. Now then, these cities are going to play such a prominent role in Christianity. And when you think about how they started, how the Jews didn't want to have anything to do with it, and we're going to pick up next week in chapter 19, which will begin the third missionary journey of Paul. Well, folks, when we get through with Acts and we go back to study these cities or these epistles that Paul writes to these churches, he's not writing these to the Jews. He is writing these to the Gentiles. That is to me and you. And that's why I like to say that when we read and we pick up and we read the letters that Paul wrote to these churches, we should read them as Paul writing to me as an individual and not to a group. Because if you think about it, Jesus Christ changed everything. He's not going to come in and say, hey, Fowler Springs, top of the hill Baptist bunch, you're going to heaven because you're top of the hill Sunday school group. No. Christ comes in and he says, well, Donna McCann, Martin, says right here in this book on such and such a day that you gave your soul and asked my son to cover your sins with his blood, and he did. Welcome in, my good and faithful servant. It is going to be on an individual basis. My grandmama can't get me there. My grandpa can't get me there. My political party sure ain't going to get me there. Only my relationship with Jesus Christ is going to get me to heaven. And that is what Paul has started on this second missionary journey. Because it was when God gave him that vision to go to the Gentiles, that is the beginning of salvation for me and you. Now then, we're going to see here, beginning in verse 23, that after spending some time there, he passes successfully through the area. He goes. Now he meets this guy by the name of Apollos. He is going to be important. As we read about him, he says he is in Alexandria. He's from Egypt. He says that he is an eloquent man. He's proficient in the scriptures. Folks, that means he knew them forwards and backwards. He knew all about the prophets. He was speaking and teaching things about Jesus from the scriptures. He doesn't know about Jesus yet. But Priscilla and Aquila, they're going to educate Apollos. And if you look at secular writings from these first century historians, you're going to see that this guy, he went everywhere preaching the saving grace of Jesus Christ and supported all of these churches and gave encouragement to everybody. So it's important. Picking up in verse 26, and he begins speaking boldly in the synagogues, put Priscilla and Aquila, set him straight, and when he wanted to go across to Achaia, the brothers encouraged him and wrote to the disciples welcoming him. When he had arrived, he greatly helped those who had believed through grace. For he powerfully refuted the Jews in public, demonstrating by the scriptures that Jesus Christ, or Christ was the Messiah. So, we're through with the second missionary journey. The foundation for Christianity, to me, has been set. Any questions or comments? Did I confuse y'all? Good enough. It's my job to confuse, not to give enlightenment. Yes.
You're thinking about, this is a man who was doing everything in his power to destroy Christianity, and now he is 180 degrees. And these people that he's talking to, some of them have no to kill them all.
Well, you know, there's parts of the Bible I don't like. That part in there about how to develop patience, I don't like it. I don't like it.
I'm amazed at the architecture and all back then.
Yes.
God, it was done.
Hey, Ben, you know they had indoor plumbing.
That's unbelievable.
They had indoor water. Get all day. I tell you why I really like studying that time. Because if you ever think about it in the movies and everything, all the men's laying back on them couches and them women's bringing them big old grapes. You know?
We wouldn't have been in that part.
Waving
Y'all
them,
wouldn't have been in that one.
waving them with a fan.
Yeah, waving us with a fan. I like that.
We'd have been the part doing work.
Well, next week we're going to pick up with Paul's third missionary journey, and he's going to make his way back to Jerusalem, but he's going back to Antioch, and he's going to start the third journey there. That's going to be the light blue. He's going to hit all these places again. Well, folks, we're going to get into just a little bit more detail about some of the people that he meets,